this video, I'm answering the question, what is a doula? I'm going to talk about the role of a doula, some misconceptions, and then what are we actually there for and why and whom should get one. All right, so first of all, the word doula comes from an ancient Greek word, which means female servant or woman who serves. And typically this does mean somebody who serves in childbirth particularly. So some of the misconceptions around doulas are that they're only for people who are having a home birth, or some questions around, do they replace a partner or a medical provider? So let's address those things first. Number one, anybody can get a doula, whether you're having a home birth, a hospital birth, or in a birth center, or even a free birth just out in the wilds. A doula is really for everybody, and we'll talk about why that is. Secondly, doulas do not replace partners in childbirth. So partners play a particular role, especially the emotional component. They are your teammate. They're the one that probably helped you create this baby. So they are not a doula. So a lot of people say, oh, I have my husband or I have my partner, I don't need a doula. They play very different roles. So we'll get into that as well. And then number three, I think a lot of people associate a doula with a midwife, and they are not the same thing. So doulas are not trained medically. We do not have any sort of medical education or training, though we do understand the stages of labor and what's happening physiologically and anatomically in labor. We are in no way the catchers of baby or doing any sort of medical tasks or acts, all right? So we do not act as a medical provider. We are there as physical, emotional, educational, and advocacy support. So let's do a rundown of what that really means. Typically, pregnant women will hire a doula either in their second, but most commonly in their third trimester when things start getting kind of real. So doulas are there to really provide lots of information and support to making the best decision for you and the type of birth that you want to have. So if you are a doula, I am a doula, we're most likely obsessed with understanding birth because we find it fascinating and beautiful. So we know of all the different types of birth options that there are. So we have home births, people that want to stay at home and birth their babies at home. And doulas are pretty well versed in understanding what that looks like and what kind of support women will need and how to prepare for that. Number two is a birth center. So it's a little bit more access to a couple more things than you would have at home, but it's not quite the hospital. So we also understand what's available and how to prepare for that type of birth. And number three is a hospital. And so we kind of also understand how to prepare for a hospital birth, what kind of things to ask your providers, and also help you assess your birth plan and ensure that we can advocate for you getting your preferences. So all three of these routes are kind of, first off, what a doula can help you decide if you feel really overwhelmed with what kind of birth you actually want to have. So that's number one, is we come into your life when you're ready to kind of have those conversations. Then, once you've decided what type of birth you want to have, we help you write your birth plan, or not really plan, but your birth preferences. So basically, we get really clear on providing you with the education you need around what sort of ways do you want to deal with the sensations of labor. What are the steps that you want to take immediately when baby comes out? Like, for example, are you going to choose to do the vitamin K shot? Do you want skin to skin contact? Kind of all the details that you may not be thinking of, or that might seem a little bit overwhelming when you're Googling all of the things to prepare for birth. Thirdly, we attend your birth. So we are on call for you 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after your due date. So due dates are most commonly not accurate. So we're available for that entire month because things can really happen at any time. So what that means is that when you start going into labor, we're your point person for you to call and say, hey, I think I'm having contractions. What do I do? Do I go straight to the hospital? And we're kind of there to work you through assessing whether it's either time to move to the hospital if that's what you're doing, or kind of give you guidance of how to best support your body during the time. And then when we come to your labor, and that's typically when contractions start getting a little more intense and it's more difficult to manage them on your own. And we are trained in certain different ways to offer coping techniques, such as offering different movements, different ways of breathing, different touch points, and just well versed in a lot of different options for coping with labor. We've practiced them in our training, and so we know how to provide that for you. And then lastly, we're also there for a short period of postpartum support. So things like processing your birth story, helping in getting baby to latch and being there for you and with you during those first golden hours of time to really make sure that you're settling into this new reality and new role that you're in. So for the most part, that is our role. That is where we are there for. I forgot to mention one final thing, crucially, which is all about advocacy. So especially if you're having a hospital birth, there's certain things in the hospital that are kind of routine that are done automatically. For example, cutting of the cord very quickly. And let's say that you as a mother have decided you don't want to cut the cord really quickly. You want to let all the blood come through before they cut the cord. In a hospital setting, sometimes things happen so quick and it's hard when you're in an altered state of consciousness or when there's a power dynamic there. It doesn't really feel comfortable all the time to speak up. So as doulas, we are trained not to fight any providers or not to question them, but to advocate for what it is that you prefer. So we do this by saying, is this a medical emergency? Can we take 5 minutes? Things like this to kind of slow down the process and ensure that you're getting the outcomes that you really hoped for if it's possible. So in terms of the benefits of having a doula, there's no mistaking it. There's been lots of studies done on having continuous support during labor. There was one done by the Cochrane Review study where I think they took about 15,000 pregnant women who had just had babies, and some who had doulas, some who hadn't. And 25% of them were less likely to have a C-section through having a doula or a person that was continuously supporting. 41% were less presented as feeling more satisfied or less needing an assisted birth. So 41% were less likely to need an assisted birth, meaning like a vacuum or forceps or things like that. And that most likely is because doulas are trained in knowing how to shift the pelvis, movements that you can do, breathing techniques to where the fight or flight system is not keeping baby stuck in one position. And then there's lots more evidence and studies showing that having this sort of nonstop support and presence at your birth, you'll have a higher satisfaction with how your birth went. And then there's lots more studies showing and lots of just personal reviews that having a doula, lots of women saying they had a doula at one birth and didn't have it at another, and how big of a difference it really makes. Lastly, addressing the concern that, oh, well, I have my husband there, so I don't need a doula. The husband or the partner plays a completely different role than the doula. So you as the partner or you as the husband is really there to be the emotional support for your partner. They know you the best. They have been with you through this entire process. So they are there to really be your emotional anchor. Whereas the doula is there to facilitate different sort of changes and be the calm in the storm for if things do start to go in a different way than is planned. So most likely partners aren't as well versed in the stages of labor or how to assist in that process of navigating the changes. And so having both a partner and a doula can play a really important team to encouraging this to be a really empowering experience for you. I hope this answered any questions or misconceptions that you had. If you are pregnant right now and you're looking for a little bit of extra support, you can download my free pregnancy tracker down below. And I give this to all my doula clients. And essentially, it's just a way to have all of the information about your pregnancy journey in one place. So a place to put your birth plan, a place to track your symptoms and your appointments, and even photos. So if you're interested in that, it also is week by week giving you different things to pay attention to and changes in baby and body. If you're interested in that, feel free to download that below. And if you have any other questions around what is a doula, how do you find one, what questions should you ask, feel free to drop a comment down below, subscribe. I'll be talking much more about doula roles and all of that in the future. So stay tuned, and congratulations if you are pregnant and or planning on it. I'll see you in the next one.